So, okay, so Tara says she wants to start from scratch. So let's go through a brief start from scratch. So you log into LibGuides, and so it looks like this when you log in. And you may, I'm, I have some administrative privileges. I'm not Jason level administrative privileges. So occasionally you'll see that I can see some things that you can't see. But anyway, so to create the guide, you're going to go here to create guide, or you can edit a guide that you already own or somebody, that you have editing privileges to. So creating the guide. And then with every guide, you can either start from scratch or you can copy the content from an existing guide. And one of the things that you need to be aware about if you copy an existing guide, and this will make more sense as we go, is that it will duplicate everything and instead of mapping it. So like if you have a video and you update it in one place, this is the difference between copying and mapping. If you copy it, it makes two of those videos, and you have to, if you update the video, you have to remember to update it in both places. If you map it, you only have to change it in the original place, and it will update everywhere that you mapped it to. So that's kind of the downside of copying an existing guide, is that you lose that feature. So a lot of times I'll start fresh and then just copy over the pieces that I want. So you name the guide here. You have to name it something. You can change it later. You can put a description in. You can change it later. The guide type, we use these top 4. We don't use internal. We don't use template that I know of. There does not seem to be a hard and fast rule about what these types are. It seems to be that people have randomly selected them. So I'm not going to try to give you a definition of them. Just pick the one you want. Then all of them go in a general group. You can also choose to put them in a perimeter campus group. I would not put them in special collections and archives because we're not in special collections and archives. But if you think your guide is of particular interest to perimeter, you can choose the perimeter guides. Otherwise, they just go in the general pile. And then you can choose whether or not you're going to share your content. The community means it is available for people throughout the LibGuides community. So like I've had guides that were copied by people at other schools. And the polite thing to do is ask before you do it. Even though you've given permission that they can copy it, it's just nice to ask. They do get a notification that you've copied your guide, and sometimes it's a little bit like one of the people didn't ask me, and then like months later they had my guide completely unchanged that they were using, and I was a little huffy about that. So, think about if you want to share or not. You can share internally, which means other people at Georgia State can share it, use your guide, but not people outside of Georgia State. And then no, it's just no, it's mine. So then you create the guide, and I should have done like a, so this is what you end up with. And like I said, you can change any of these things up here. You can give it a friendly URL if you didn't do it before. And it will always be the same, research.library.gsu.edu, and then / whatever your friendly URL is. If you're making a guide for a class, I don't know that Georgia State has a style guide. Does anyone know if we have a style guide? At Perimeter, we did.
Yeah, they have one.
Okay. So
I can give you the link.
Okay, give me the link. So if you're making a guide for a class, you want to make it in the form, the friendly URL needs to be in the form like ENGL 1102, and then the teacher's name. Or if it's not for a specific teacher, you could say like lit crit, something like that. So that would be the form, preferably all lowercase, like that. This is just going to be Marianne Test. And then the name of the guide should also be like ENGL space 1101 Harrison. Because the reason this makes a difference is when you go to the LibGuides, menu, and you look at all guides, if you have, it's kind of like in cataloging. If you have, let me go down to, okay, so if you have a space or don't have a space, it affects how they alphabetize and how they line up in the list. So you don't want to have a whole bunch of, you don't want some of them to be like English spelled out 1101, and some of them be ENGL no space 1101, and some of them be ENGL space 1101. So that's why it's important for it to be consistent. And then after that, you want to have the actual name of the class, unless there's, some specific topic that is that you're discussing as opposed to the class. Anyway, tags, usually it could be something if somebody was looking for it, but a lot of times what we use the tags for is a specific professor. So if this was my current topics with video instruction guide, I might be using it for Marilyn Render's class. I'd go ahead and put render as a tag, because even though it's not specific for her class, I can tell her students you can search for render and the guide that you're looking for will come up. If you assign a subject, it will show up in the subjects list. So this default list that comes up like this. So if they're looking for your art and design guide, it would be listed in here. If you don't assign it a subject, it won't just automatically be assigned. So you can use this to put it on there, and you can also use it to not put it on there. So if you're making an English guide that's very specific to a class, you may not want it in this menu. And you can just tell people to look by your name, or you could put it in the perimeter group or something like that. So if we have so many English guides that it might be better to not put it in the list, or to put it in temporarily and then take it out. So, keep that in mind. This is driving me crazy. I can't get back to where I'm going to move it down here. Okay. So that's what the subjects and the tags are about. Over here, you have this little toolbar. The things you might want to notice here are the guide editor. So if you want to share editing, I can make anyone in here a co-editor with me, and there can be multiple editors. So it's a good way to collaborate. Here you've got the previous and next links that I showed you before, and you've also got the guide navigation layout. So this is the overall layout of the guide. So you can, the default is this tabbed guide like this with 3 columns. Okay, sorry, I'm doing a webinar at 3 and my co-presenter just said she wasn't going to be there. So, so there's these other things like different column sizes. Now, all this column stuff is changeable, but if you do side navigation and tab navigation, well, it actually is changeable, but you're going to have to move your boxes all around. It completely screws things up if you change it after you've already made the guide. So it's better to decide if you want the side navigation or the top navigation from the get-go. Come on, side navigation. Did I not pick it? Oh, for some reason I ended up with tabs. Side. So the side navigation is actually more contemporary, but you know, then you end up with something like this. I'm taking my picture off of this one. But the nice thing is the navigation ends up over here on the left-hand side, which is kind of what users have come to expect. And you can also have it so that as you add boxes, like on that the guide that I had made, where it's easy to see what's on that page. So I really like the side navigation. It just doesn't give you as much real estate on the page to put stuff. So that's the side navigation. And then let's see here, that's where you can do an internal discussion board, which I have never used before. And then there's the preview link. So this is what it will look like to the user. So far we have no content, so all it has is the one button. So then you need to start putting in content. So you've got the boxes. And you have different types of boxes. You'll almost always use the standard box. But there's also the tabbed box, and that is the WebEx navigation won't let me get to what I need to get to. It's one where there's tabs and you go to different little sub-tabs on the box. And I like that because it's a way of putting everything above the fold. But the downside of that is that you can't copy things just from like one tab. You copy the whole box, or you copy like the video, but you can't just copy that tab. Gallery is like a rotating picture show. I don't know why you would use it in a class guide, honestly. And the profile is like your picture. Now you can add other people's profiles. So if you just say a profile box, it will automatically pick you. But if you have like a co-author or something and you want to put their picture on your guide, you can change it to them. And you can choose where you want to put it. Right now there's only one place to put it because we don't have any other boxes. You can always move it. So floating box means it's not going to have any borders. So I'll show you what that looks like. We'll just make a floating box. And draft mode means it's not going to show. So it's a way of hiding the box. I usually use it after the fact when I have a box that I just can't part with, but I don't need anymore. I'll hide it. But you can also use it if it's not ready for prime time. So we're going to make a floating box. And a lot of times I use a floating box at the top, and I'll add some text where I'll say, I hope you like this guide. And then in it has a little, I didn't realize this till I watched the video. That's supposed to be a life preserver because it's floating. Get it? So, so when you preview it, it's like this. So it doesn't have a box. So a lot of times I'll use the floating box as sort of like the description because people don't really see the description the way they have it. So I'll use the floating box as the description. Okay. So let's add another box. And we'll call this box 2. And I'm just going to keep the standard box. Well, how about this? I'm going to reuse a box. So if I have a box on another guide that I really like, I can use it over again. And I'm going to put a box from the instruction, I call it library instruction videos and tutorials. And then I'm going to choose a box. I'll choose the Go Express video. And if I want it to be the name the same thing, I just leave it empty. If I want to change the name, I can say, watch this Gill Express video, and I'll change that. All it changes is the name of the box. Everything else about the box stays the same. And I can hide it, which I don't know why I would do that at this point. So here's my chance. If I do it, if I just click save right now, it's gonna map to that box. So if I change the video in that box on the original page, it will also change here, which is good if you're gonna, you want the video to update. It's not good if you don't want somebody to unexpectedly change your, content. But usually in the case of a video, you would want it to update. I'm not going to copy it. I'm just going to map to it. So here it is. One of the downsides to mapping is that I can't change anything else about this box. I can't add any extra text or anything to this box because it's just mapped. So, there's goods and bad things about it. So then I go on and I add, whatever boxes I want. I'll add box 3. So in box 3, let's talk about these different types of content. So rich text is when I'm just going to type some words or put some pictures in. Database is when I'm going to link to a database. So I have to choose. Laura Bertle currently owns all of the databases. So it'll always say that it's owned by Laura Bertle. And you can link to this database, and it will automatically do the correct URL with the Athenizer link and all that kind of stuff in there. It will put this description in here unless you change it. So you can make your own description, which I usually do, because I'll say, use this to find academic journal articles for your paper. And then you can control how the description displays, and I'll just kind of let you play with those if you want to. Let's see what other kind. Linking is kind of what I did, where I make a link, and you want to use this kind of link. It will look like this to make a link, and the reason you want to do that instead of putting it in the text is that the link checker will check to see if it's working or not, and people can reuse it. So if you put a link in a block of words and Jason runs the link checker, it's not going to catch that. So it's real easy to end up with dead links that way. Did that make sense? Maybe. Okay. I was missing all this in the chat while I was talking, so I was going back and looking at it. Okay. The other thing you can do is put a media widget in. This is like if you want to put a video, or if you want to put a search widget in, you can do that. Jason has a guide that's just like all kind of search widgets in the library catalog and the chat box and stuff like that. So you can go find his guides that have those things and map to those. One thing that Georgia State doesn't do that I wish they did, we used to do at GPC, is that when we had links or widgets that were videos, we would put the word video in the title of the thing. So right now, when you are trying to find, you're trying to go to the Gill Find catalog, you have no idea if the link is actually to the catalog or to a video. And so I try to always use, let's say I want to use a link and I'm going to use an existing link, and I'm going to put, the other thing is we don't call the catalog the same thing all the time. Sometimes it's Gill Find and sometimes it's library and sometimes it's catalog. So, some of these, it's like click here to access the catalog. But if I want a video, I have to look for one that says video. So that one I know is a video. So I'm pleading with you. If you make links that are videos or widgets that are videos, put the word video in there. Or interactive tutorial, or and also the time is convenient. It helps you find it again, find the right one if you have the time. So there's also some other things that we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go into, but there's book from a catalog, a document like a PDF or a Word document. Here's where you can make the poll. It's just like a multiple choice kind of poll. That's the only option. You can embed a LibWizard item. So I can just choose, it doesn't do the tutorials. It does the forms, the quizzes, and the surveys. So now we have the research map in there. So that's how you add content. Then next I'm going to talk about HTML and moving things around. But do you have any questions about that part? Okay. All right, so let's talk about adding text. So I'm going to add text, and this editor probably looks familiar. I hope it does. If you're in the FAQ group, you've heard me talk about this already. If you copy and paste text from another place, like let's just copy this, the formatting is going to be weird. So what you want to do is go back to the original. You want to use the default formatting because it's better for accessibility readers. So you can just remove the formatting by clicking on this little TX button, and that should remove. It didn't seem to remove anything, but let's see what it looks like. Yeah, it went to the default. I should have showed you what it looked like before. Let me edit it. Okay, so let's paste it without. Well, it still looks okay, but a lot of times it ends up really weird, so it's better to take remove the formatting. So if you want to emphasize things, it's best not to have like a whole bunch of different colors. It's not to have a whole bunch of different font sizes. What you want to do, this one, we could put the hyperlink in there. If you just want to make something big, you can use the style and make it big. So it's just a little larger than the rest, and that doesn't mess up the accessibility part. If you want to have a subheader or a header, rather than making it big and bold, use the formatting, the paragraph formatting, to make it be a header. There is no header 1 and 2 in LibGuides because the header 1 is the title of the guide and header 2 is the title of the boxes. So the highest level header you can choose is header 3, and then it goes down from there. So the headers will help on a long page or a long string of text. It will help the person using Accessibility Reader locate parts of the text. Now, you've already got the boxes, so the boxes probably are going to be sufficient to steer them through the page. But if you have a real long thing of text, you might want to put some headers in there. But just don't make them big and bold to make a header. Use the tools that are on there. So the other thing I wanted to do is talk about putting images in. So well, let me go back up. So I'm going to say that I want an image, and I click on the little image thing, and I can browse the server, and these are all images that I already have uploaded in here. I can also upload a new image. So let's just say I'm going to put this in here. No, I'm not going to put that in there. That's from a paper that's not published yet. We'll put this one in here. So then it should just automatically pop up, but it doesn't. So sometimes you have to go click on the little image thing. Then you want to make sure that you have alt text. And this is one of the main problems that we have in our guides is there's a whole bunch of images and nobody's put alt text. Well, I should say nobody. Not enough people use alt text. So basically you want to look at the image and describe it to someone who can't see it. And just in some kind of brief way. Now, ideally, the image is supplementing the words in your guide. The image itself does not convey all of the information. So I might say, you know, in order to get to your library account, click on your name in the catalog as shown in the image below. So you're telling the person that can't see the image what's in that image. And then the alt text in the image will say, you know, catalog screenshot showing where to log in or something like that. So let's just go ahead and, so this is, obviously this is about requesting an interlibrary loan. So let's go back and look at some of these other things with the image. So I can change the size of the image if I want to. If I think this is too big, I can change it. I want to make sure this is locked so that it stays proportional. If it doesn't, it ends up looking kind of wacky. Well, let's be more exaggerated than that. So, you know, it ends up being distorted. And if I mess up, I can just do the little back button and it'll put back to its original size. So now it should be proportional, I think, right? Okay. Border puts a border in pixels. So usually I just say 1. We're not trying to make the border stand out. We're just trying to distinguish this white thing from the white background. But the border number is how many pixels it is. So, you know, if you put 100, you have a 100 pixel border. So we're just going to go with 1. Oh, my camera's on. How did that happen? I don't know. And then horizontal and vertical space and alignment. So I'll let you play with those. And so there's our image. Why is my camera on? Do you all see me? Is it just me?
Yes, we see you. We like seeing you.
I would have fixed my hair if I'd known I was going to be on camera. Okay, so that's that. Do you have any questions about images? Okay, so let's talk about moving things. So within a box, you can move things around. So you click on this add reorder, which is the same place that you added content, but you go down to the bottom and you put reorder content. And then you can move stuff around. You just click and drag, move stuff around. And then when you're happy, you save it. If you have a list like this, you can, is it gonna let me do it from here? If you just have a list of things, you can reorder the list in alphabetical order. So if you want to move boxes around, let's first we'll make another page. We're going to make a second page. We're going to call it page 2. Okay, we don't have any content on page 2. So let's, you know, a lot of times what happens to me is I'm making one page and I go, you know, this is getting kind of impossibly long. I think I'm going to put the research map on another page. So I click on up here where it says page, and then I want to move boxes. So I'm going to take the quiz, which I stupidly named box 3 instead of something that made sense, and I'm going to drag it over to page 2. And now I've only got this on page 1, and then on page 2, I have this box 3. Then if I want to change the boxes on one page, I can also do it the same way, but I just move these boxes around. So they would be opposite. You can also move boxes under your navigation bar, like that. I would do that sparingly, but sometimes I'll put like if I'm going to have my contact me thing there, I will put that under, or the chat widget, I'll put something like that over here. Because you saw when I first started this, when I had my profile in here, it was just enormous, and it's not really designed to be like that. So let's put that box back over here. So that's the boxes. Let's see. I did a new page. So if you want to move pages, we decide, oh, we like that quiz so much, we're going to put it in the front. We're going to move pages, and then you can move the pages around. So now page 2 is on top, and page 1 is on the bottom. You can also make things be subpages. So if I want to move the page, I'm going to make this a subpage of 2. So if it's its own page, this little arrow is on the outside, and if it's a subpage, it's on the inside of the box. It's going to be a subpage of. So now it's a subpage. When it's the tabs, the subpages will have like a little down arrow, and I will tell you that no one ever notices those. So I wouldn't use a subpage except in unusual circumstances. But these subpages aren't quite so bad. Did that make sense? So now I'm going to show you what happens if I decide now that I want to change my navigation to tabbed layout. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to change the tab to tabbed layout. So now I'm going to have to reorganize everything because it made a mess. And here's the tab. Then if I change it back, it doesn't necessarily put things back where I had them. So that's why it's good to decide ahead of time if you can, or at least before you get too far into it, to what your layout is going to be. So this is a different kind of layout here. And then I could move boxes all around to however I wanted them. So we did talk a little bit about hiding things. I'm going to get rid of this subpage. I hate subpages. Okay. So if you want to hide things, you can go back after the fact. You click on the little edit thing, and here you can change the floating box to not be floating, or you can put it in draft mode and just hide it completely. So on the preview, it doesn't show anymore. Here it'll have like a little eye with it's crossed off. So I'm gonna unhide it. So before we leave this page, once you've got your beautiful guide like we have it, you want to publish it. So right now it's unpublished, which means nobody can see it but the editors and the admins. So like Jason can see it. I think I can see everybody's, but like, you know, sometimes it's confusing because I'll say, oh, go to this guide, and people, I don't see it. It's because it's unpublished. So you can, what you do is you change the status and share, and you can publish it, which will put it available. It's findable in Google. It is available for everyone to see on the website. It will automatically go under your name. It won't go under subject guides unless you gave it a subject, but when you look for guides by owner, it will go in there. So people will be able to find it. If you publish it privately, it's one of those deals where if you give somebody the URL, they can access it, but it's not going to show up in the list, and it's not going to show in the list of research guides, and it's not going to show up. I don't remember what I was going to say. It's not going to show up in a Google search, and it's not going to show up in the list. So this might be a good choice if you made a guide specifically for a class that you don't think is of general interest, or sometimes it'll be a published guide that you've made for a class and you're not going to use it right now and you just want to take it off the list so the list isn't cluttered, but you just leave it in case somebody wants it. You can publish it privately. So that's how you would publish it. Some people have their account set that every time a guide is published, they get a notification. So you might, get some colleague going, "Hey, nice guide," if you publish it. So that's kind of the LibGuide overview. So the other two things I was going to talk about was editing your profile and looking at statistics. Is that of interest?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So to edit your profile, you go up and you while you're logged in, you click on your name, and then it says click on. There's instructions down here, so you can change this stuff if you want. So you're going to edit your profile, and you can change when you put your profile in the box. You can change, ask me a question, or you can change whatever the box title is, but your default box title is going to be whatever you put here. Then this is where you can change the image, or you can not have an image. We strongly encourage everyone to have an image because on that the LibGuides menu page, it just pulls. There's no way to control those images, and it looks really unfriendly if we just have a bunch of gray blobs on that page. So I encourage you to put some kind of picture here, and hopefully a picture of you and not your pet. And so you can put some more stuff about yourself if you want to. I don't have a whole lot of stuff. You can also link it to LibCal. So if you want to set up a system of research appointments for yourself, you can use this to create the appointment thing in LibCal. You just have to remember to keep it up so they're not making appointments when you're already busy. And so that's how you update your profile. And that's one way, we were talking earlier about the personal branding. Your profile page is one of the things you can do, or your profile box, this is what it's going to look like, is, one way you can sort of help with your branding. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was the statistics. And so the statistics tab is right here. And what you're most interested in is the guides. So you can do all guides, or you can just choose all of your guides. You can see which ones of your guides have the most views. Or you can look at a specific guide. So I'm going to pick a guide that has a fair amount of activity, so it's not just like 30 views. The default length of time is like a week, so pick a reasonable amount of time. So let's go back to January 1st and then run the report. So here's the views on this guide since January 1. And it's had 1,060 views. If I want to see more about this, I can click on the name of the guide, and it keeps my date range, but it's going to show me the page views for each of the pages in this guide. So the number one page is almost always the introduction because that's the landing page or whatever you call it, home, introduction, start here, whatever. You can look at the refer or URLs if you're into that, like where they came from to get there. And then the other pages. And so you can see of the 1,000 views, only 29 people looked at the catalog. So you can see that people want it, they land on the introduction and then they go to the research databases. That's really all they care about. The storage is a hidden page, so there's no views. Those are boxes that I just stuck into storage because I've had this guide for 10 years. And some things I just go, I'm going to save that for later, and I shove it in storage. So, so that's that. You can also look at the assets. Now, every time you make a link or a widget or a document or whatever, you create what LibGuides calls an asset. So this will give you an analysis of all those assets on your page. And remember how I told you to use the, insert a link the way I showed you to insert a link? The other reason you want to do that is that you get stats on it that way. So if you have some text and you put a hyperlink in the middle of the text, it does not give you any stats on that link. So I'm going to run the report on the assets in this guide. And this takes a little while if you have a lot of stuff in your guide. So this is when they're reused. So there's a Galileo link that's been used almost 4,000 times, but that's not in this guide. In this guide, the number one thing was the Discover search. They used a link to the Discover search 30 times. They used a link to Galileo 27 times, and I didn't even know I had a link to Galileo still in there. But it's a database. It's not a link I put in there. I put it in as a database. Issues and controversies and CQ researchers. So those are the people, that's what the people are using their guide for. They're going to the guide and they're linking to the databases. So one of the useful things, and you can see like the playlists, although there's not that many in this guide. But one of the things that this can be useful for is finding things that people are not using. So there's a tendency to just put a lot of stuff in a guide, like, oh, they might be interested in this, they might be interested in that. And when you go back and look, it's like people just never click on those links, and it's just sort of cluttering things. So it's, it's a good time to go, nobody's looked at this link in a year. I guess they're not going to, and just take it out, just to kind of do a cleanup process. Periodically, Jason does a link checker, which you can also do, I think. It's under Tools. And this will, if you run the link checker, it'll tell you if there's broken links in your guide. But it only checks these kind of links, not the inline links. So then you know where to look and replace them. I didn't know there was a search and replace. I'm not sure how that works. I'll have to try that. The other thing you can do is you can use this content search. You can see all the guides. Why is it only showing this one? Oh, that's where I last went. Okay, so it shows all the guides. We have 1,000 some guides, and you can sort them in many different ways. You can also look at all the assets. So like when I was looking for a catalog video, I knew it wasn't going to be a link. It was going to be a widget, because a widget is either a search widget or a video. So this helped me, identify something that I wanted to link to by searching in these widgets. And you can tell by the mapping count, like how many times it's been reused. And so this, it's usually the one that's got the most count that you want to map to. So I would just need to go find this. The one with the star is the original. So I would go here and I would see if this is the one I want. And then if I want to map to it, I would copy this exact name and search for that. And so that gets kind of confusing at times. So that's how I use the statistics to help me improve my guides and find out if people are actually using them.